Hello, everybody. So I wait now for other people to get on. Okay, good Yontif.
You want to unmute and say hello, please feel free.
Can you hear me?
قرمزه.
Cecile, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, wonderful. Oh, lovely to see
گوش
you.
کنی.
I can hear
با
you.
حرف تو بخواه حرف بزنی.
And I should press share screen, Sarah?
I'm going to do the share screen part whenever you're ready.
I'm ready. I don't hear you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Pleasure.
Oh my, look what's on. We're all set. Okay, we're not going to use this for a long time. I have to wait for other people to get on, right?
Yeah, a few more people.
This is just an example I'm using to get started with, because this is going to be really, I hope, a discussion rather than at least participation by the group. Now, Cecile, for example, say something to me.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, a little louder.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, so
Good.
you can participate. That's great. Okay, I just wanted to see if everybody could get on. This is just an example, not really part of the discussion. I'll wait a few minutes for others to join, should I?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay.
But you can all,
I'll get some notes.
Hello, Sarah.
hello, how are you? Welcome, everybody. Nice to see you all. On this day that feels like 5 o'clock in the evening, but it's only 1:30, 1:45. All right.
اون جست خطا هستش. اگه خطا هست اگر نمیفهم حرفاتو. رو میکروفون خطا هست. Okay.
Cecile, you're so loyal. You've always come to my talks or to Tamar's programs.
Oh,
You look good.
thank you. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes.
Good.
Yeah, because I'm going to want people to participate.
Good afternoon, Rabbi.
Oh,
Bronstein.
great to hear you and see you.
Joe Yom Tov. We are from Arizona. We are in Arizona
Oh
now.
my, Gemar Chatima Tova to you. May you have a good year.
Toda Rabbi.
Yeah.
Rabbi Bronstein, my husband and I joined NSCI almost 3 years ago, and I
Well,
never had the pleasure of meeting you, but we bought your Passover Haggadah, and we've used it. It's earmarked, it's got spills on it, and the artwork is wonderful, so thank you.
well, thank you for that. And I'm going to get rid of, Sarah, how do I get rid of this sheet here? This on the top, the Hebrew text.
What do you want?
What is that?
Which one do you want to show? Do you want to show a different one?
Yeah, what's the next one you have?
That one?
Oh, that's good. And then you're going to be with us during the talk?
Yes.
Okay, so let's go back to just the one before, just that. That's fine. And I'll keep that on. Now, should I start?
Yeah.
Okay, so the idea here was to to show how why, to ask the question. Well, I'll begin with the question. In the prayer book that's used generally at the temple now, it's called Mishkan HaNefesh. It's the High Holy Day prayer book. Here, I'll hold up an example so those who are on can see what I mean. It's this big prayer book. Do you see it?
Yes.
Okay, so you're familiar with it because it's the temple a prayer, high holiday prayer book. It's pretty big and pretty heavy. and here, just to focus on the Yizkor service, which is our topic, this is the prayer book called A Book of Remembrance, prepared by Rabbi Wendy Geffen and maybe other members of the rabbinate. And it traditionally, well, the Yizkor service, we can trace back the very beginnings of it to the destruction of the Second Temple in the year 70 CE.
Rabbi Bronstein, you shut off your video for a second there. I don't know when you put the other book down. I don't know if you unplugged your video or something.
I can't, to start my video.
Yeah. Ah, perfect.
Okay. Now, while this is on, let me tell you, add to, I'm not talking to you, Sarah, to the group. If you picture this page, you see memorial service down on the right-hand page. In the middle, it says memorial service. Do you see that?
Yes,
Or on the left side, memorial service for the dead.
right.
This is a tradition. This is the first of about 2 pages, 2.5 pages at the most, of the typical traditional memorial service. Now, it's about 2 pages, and or maybe a little over 2 pages. But this is a typical service used in any traditional congregation that's is called, which we would call Yizkor, the memorial service. So let's remove this page. We can remove this page now. And remove this page. No, wait a minute. Yes, this one page is from another traditional service. But here the service is on 1 page in Hebrew, 1 page in English. Now, the traditional Yizkor memorial service is made up of 3 parts of text. There's other listings, but text. The first paragraph is Av HaRachamim. You can read the text in English, Father of mercy, in his hands are the souls of all the living. And then beginning around in the middle of this next larger paragraph is another part. In Hebrew, it's clear, beginning here, viata, and then around here begins the actual Yizkor texts, in the sense of may the memory of this one may I remember my mother, my father. You can list their names. So this is the entire Yizkor service. Now we'll leave this page. In most traditional, and in some traditional, as I say, there's another example I gave you. Here's one up here. So now we can remove these pages. I think most people who are joining us are here. We can,
Do you like this one or
it's a
just?
memorial service for the departed. This is just the second page. Keep on going. Yes. And this is a 1-page version. We can keep on going. We pass this up. This is just an example because we want to discuss our Yizkor service. And we can keep on going. Just remove this.
All right, I'm gonna Do you, I'm
Well,
gonna stop
okay,
this.
that's fine. Now, I want to just show you again, in the current prayer book of Reform Judaism, which Susan Longo was so nice. The whole prayer book for the whole congregation was donated by Susan Longo. I don't know whether she's on or away or what, but this is a big prayer book, big, thick prayer book for Yom Kippur. This is just the Yom Kippur service, this whole book. And the synagogue owns them and uses them. Now, in this is a Yizkor service. I counted the pages. It's about 15 pages of a Yizkor service. 15 pages. The question that I'm giving you this background in Wendy's book of Rabbi Geffen's book of remembrance, which is the Yizkor service for the congregation. This is a book. Most of it is names, the names of the departed. On one side, I'll show you, on one side of the page is, on one side of the page in this booklet, you would see the names of those, here it is, on one side, the names of those who list the people they want to remember. So these are, on one side, the giver of the names for this book. Of course, there's a fee for doing it. And then they wanted these names on the left mentioned during the Yizkor service, or at least looked at during the Yizkor service. I don't think they can all be read. It would take all afternoon. But that's the Book of Remembrance, and people take these books home as to keep. And I contributed names, members of my family. I joined in and did the same thing somewhere around here in the bees. Well, it doesn't matter, but they're here. Now, I'm going to remove this page. There it is. There's Rabbi Herbert Bronstein. Just wanted these names remembered. My wife, Tamar, her father, her mother, my father, my mother, my two brothers who died, and my sister-in-law. So a sister-in-law. So that's what people do, and I do show this because I want to point out something. Now we can remove this page as well. We can remove these pages. Good. So here we are. Now, what I want to tell you is that this practice of Yizkor, not the name, goes way back. It goes back to the destruction of the Second Temple and the killing of many people. After that, our people were given the opportunity in the year, well, I can just say 200. It's between 180, 190, and 210. We don't know the exact time, but what happened was that the rabbinate, official rabbinate, was organized because the Roman government wanted a system, a hierarchy. We never did this before, but their first chief rabbi, in other words, was appointed, and he instituted a number of Jewish practices, first contained in a book called the Mishnah. Now, in that book, for the first time, we find the following three practices which have lasted until today. So that's a long time. One, the saying of a prayer of remembrance, which now we call Yizkor. I'll give you why it's called Yizkor. And so the prayer of remembrance, of remembering those departed, an official, I'm sure people did it, but this was an official prayer. It's remained basically the same to this day, except in one Jewish community, and you'll be surprised to hear which one. The prayer, names, and the custom of giving tzedakah, contributing to a cause, a synagogue, a great cause, a community cause for good, a charity in their memory. The Yizkor then was, the Yizkor prayer was, and it is still in conservative and traditional Orthodox, traditional Judaism, after the Torah service, when other blessings are made. You know, people made blessings on the Shabbat after the birth of a child, along with which came a contribution to the congregation. And therefore, I'm donating tzedakah to the congregation, or a loss, or a wedding, or something like that. That's still done. And you've seen it. You may have been present for many such things. So the element of a prayer, a mentioning of names, and the loved ones departed, and giving to charity, whether the synagogue or some other practice. But the Yizkor prayer remained a very short prayer. So guess which group, Reform Judaism, Orthodox Judaism, Conservative Judaism in the United States, which has the longest Yizkor service by far? Well, one, if you want to guess, I'm giving it away, sort of. Reform Judaism has the official prayer book, not the ones you use at the synagogue, because Rabbi Geffen wrote one of her own, this book. But this big book is the official prayer book for Yom Kippur of the Reform movement. It's used for the rest of your service at the synagogue. Get all your exercise because it's heavy. But the Yizkor service in this book is 15 pages long. If I wanted to add the other remembrance passages, there's a kind of a mix-up, because the Tikkun Olam, repairing the world, has its own Yizkor passages in it, so even longer. Why? Now I ask the question. I've given you the whole thing. The original Yizkor service is a page and a half, depending on the print. No more than 2 pages. It's traditional. The Yizkor prayer itself is pretty short. It has 3 paragraphs. One based on, called Av HaRachamim, Father of Mercies. Another prayer which begins with the word "and now," and then another, just a paragraph, and then Yizkor, remember please these, oh God, keep in mind, bring into your mind, bring into your recall, bring into your attention, oh God, these persons who have died, who I love. And that's the whole Yizkor. And then the Reform Yizkor service is at least 15 to 18 pages long. Why should it be? Now, here's my question to you. And I'd like you, the two of you, to join in if you want to guess an answer. Why do you think the Reform Yizkor service? This is not a question I'm asking to make a presentation. I've had my own thoughts of it. Why do you think it's the longest service? Cecile, do you have any ideas?
Oh, I was just looking in the book to see what was going on.
Good.
In the book, and a lot of it are specific prayers for a loss. There's one for a man or a boy, for a woman or a girl.
Oh, yes, divided up like that. That's good.
Right. And then there was the 5 stages of grief. Here.
Yeah, now this is where you get started. That's a whole liturgy created by some Reform rabbi. And there's another one like that too. There's 7 days of grief. There's another one that's in the Tikkun Olam section, which is a kind of mix. In other words, by far, the longest memorial service is in the Reform Prayer Book. Do you have, Seal, do you have any idea what one?
May I make a thought?
Good. Hi.
I find both the service in the temple's booklet and in the prayer book, Mishkan Tefillah.
Good.
I find it very moving, and I think in a sense it's sort of like Shabbat. There is a separation for us to really concentrate on our loved ones, and I found the whole thing very, very moving, and the whole service today. Rabbi Green.
You heard that you were at the service. Good. Okay.
Yes, I participated online, and I stood and I'm weeping. I have candles and pictures of my parents. But I believe, I mean, normally you can't do that in shul. But you asked the question, why would the reform be longer? Partly perhaps that many Reform Jews don't know all of the traditions. This is one way of bringing people into.
Very good.
And another, I think for those of us who do know the traditions, again, it's a special time and a special place. That's my thinking.
Very good. So the service is used, which a Jewish service often is, for instruction. It's a matter of instructing the congregation on these practices and backgrounds and texts. So one is instruction. We're instructed about a background. And you cried, didn't you? And I remember as a child, people sobbing. I don't remember it so much when I was rabbi there using the regular prayer, maybe because the pulpit is such a distance from the congregation. But I do remember people sobbing when I was a kid during Yizkor. By the way, I don't know whether either of you remember this custom. When I was a child, now I'm going to pick on you to tell why. Children were usually let out of the service, told to leave. You're shaking your head. Do you remember anything like that? We left during Yizkor. The kids left. It was a good time to socialize with our friends on Yom Kippur because we had enough time to go to the next synagogue down the street and visit with them. But why were children, let's see if you come up with an idea. Why did children, this was a conservative congregation, I would say conservative on the more traditional side. Children left the congregation, left the synagogue during Yizkor. Why do you think that it was then? Can you guess? Good. Here's someone else. Why do you think? Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was thinking, I mean, I've been a member for 31 years. My 36-year-old daughter is here today. And I was telling her, how moving and how I cry the whole time every year. And she said, well, that's just for those who have lost a parent. So growing up, even at North Shore, that was her understanding. But growing up at Beth Emmet, we did leave. And it was for protecting. It was the parents and grandparents who were in there were protecting the children from observing the grief, the intense grief, is what I thought.
That's interesting. That's a good idea.
Probably
my mother
not
took me to services.
Could there be any other reason why children left? I remember leaving as a child. In
Go
fact,
ahead,
it
go
was
ahead, Dick.
kind of, we were let out, or it was indicated that we should leave. Could
Uh,
be,
but my mother took me to services. It was a Reformed temple in Rogers Park. And this was the late 50s and the 60s. And she always wanted to go to Yizkor. Her mother died when she was only 10. And I accompanied her the whole time. I felt very proud. And so that was my experience.
good. You know, Yizkor is the most attended service. I'm going to add another thing to this that you can think about. The Yizkor service is usually held in Orthodox and conservative congregations right after the Torah reading in the morning. So it's connected with blessings of all kinds after the Torah reading. Reform Judaism moved it to right after the afternoon service. It's still to come today. After the afternoon service, and then Yizkor, and then Nehila, the closing service. Why do you think that was? Why that move of the entire service to the afternoon part of Reform Jewish services, or Mincha, the afternoon service, then Yizkor, then the Nehila, the closing service. Any ideas there?
I can give it an idea.
Oh, good. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. I guess in my perception of this, I'd view that as a sort of, final tribute of sorts. That you spend the whole day in services, you spend the whole day praying, reflecting, remembering, and then at the end of all this experience, you get to remember your loved ones, those you cared about, friends, family, children, parents. And so it's a final way of just remembering it before the end of our Yom Kippur day.
Make sure to think of them before the end of it.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, I heard a kind of, I was talking to maybe a cynical person, or you on the other side, you might call it a realistic person, that the Yizkor was put late in the middle there, brief afternoon service, reading of the Torah. That's what's done in all forms of Judaism, and then the Yizkor service in Reform Judaism, and then the Nehila. And I think one of the reasons that Rabbi, at least it's not my thought, somebody suggested it, that because rabbis wanted people to stay for the whole day, or at least for Nehila, they made the Yizkor right before it. And I've heard Wendy saying, please stay, this is a short service. They're there for Yizkor, please stay for the beautiful concluding service in Havdalah. But people still got up and left. And even though the plea of the rabbi, I remember people getting up and leaving. So it was kind of a way to keep people there at least to the end of the day, according to this view of this person with whom I was speaking, so that they would stay for Nehila and conclude together.
Rabbi,
Yes?
if the purpose was to get the people to stay, why don't we combine the afternoon service, the memorial service, concluding service, and you always call it service, and continue? Don't stop here.
Oh, you see, now
Just
you're
continue.
thinking like a rabbi. What's the best technique to get this done?
If that's the purpose.
Okay, well, if that's the purpose, correct. But at any rate, I'm going to get back to the original question. I heard one view from Debbie that it's a beautiful service and it's a very moving service. Yes, I remember people sobbing. crying from the time I was a child. And that certainly is psychologically a valuable thing and a valuable element in itself. Um, um, and but why especially you have the same thing in shorter services in the conservative and orthodox? Why in Reform is it so long? I'm talking about the way you count it might be 15, 18 pages of service, which begins as a 2-page service. And in Reform, it's the longest service of any denomination. Any other views? Any other?
I'd like to offer one.
Oh, good.
I think that it's perhaps the fact that Reform Judaism is less comfortable with death and the afterlife, and therefore has to invest more effort into the Yizkor service.
Very
because of that
good.
concern.
I think that's a factor, certainly. I think that's one of the factors. Hi, it's like being self-convincing. I mean, there are arguments for the existence of an afterlife. Maybe that's just accepted in Orthodox Judaism, that there's the world to come and so forth. And people don't need convincing. But people today want an afterlife, want there to be something after death, and need arguments in its behalf. Am I making that clear that may be a factor? Need more beautiful texts that affirm an afterlife, and we get them at great length. Some are good, some are bad. But I have another cynical view of why it's so long. You take a look at the prayer book again, and you'll see there are whole sections that they're like liturgies in themselves. I don't like to think like this, but what did they say? A camel is a horse made by a committee or something like that. Isn't that true? In other words, committees, there should be an original thinker, artist, but when you get, and I looked this all up in the origins of the Reform paper, there were teams, whole teams doing different services with sub-editors and editors. A corporation would make it much more simpler because it'd be more productive. But I looked up the origins of our present prayer book, and it was done by teams doing different services, and then 2 layers or 3 layers of editors. And finally, probably just a name, the editor, chief editor. After all of that process. And so I think there was a situation in which people had done their own remembrance service, liturgies, and wanted them in. And everybody got their part of the service in the editing not being as strict as it may have been. Now that's a kind of a cynical view. But remember, I'm a rabbi, and I know how rabbis think. And I wrote a creative service. I want it in there. I want mine in there too. So that may be an element in the prayer book. And in the next version, well, as I said, it's much simplified, much more organized in this wonderful prayer book, Book of Remembrance. Here's the Yizkor service, Book of Remembrance, that is now in use with the names. They all have names in it. So from the beginning, though, it interested me, and that were the Yizkor service developed out of 2 periods. One, right after the Roman destruction of the Second Temple, where you have the 3 elements already: a prayer, remembrance of names, and in the Mishnah, you get names of famous rabbis and so forth. That's a text of Jewish text of Roman times. and giving to charity, always giving to some cause in memory of the person. And Jews certainly do that all the time. That happened again at a second period of the development of the Yizkor service after the Crusades. Now, the Crusades were the Christian attempt, you remember, in the 13th and 14th centuries to take back the Holy Land from the Muslim world. But on the way, great numbers of, some historians think it was a way of getting a superflux of population out of Europe and send them off someplace. Certain historians believe that the leaders in Europe wanted to send off a lot of people, but large numbers of Christians went to the Holy Land, and on the way, the Crusaders attacked Jewish communities, which they did. And after the Crusades, there were whole memorial services, those three elements, which we still have today: prayer, remembering the names, listing of names. From that period of the Crusades came what are now called Memorbuch, a memory book, listing names of communities. Let's say there was a community, Glencoe, in the Middle Ages, whatever the community, that sent contingent off to the Holy Land to take it back from the Muslims, and that had lost people in that process, listing the names from the 13th and 14th century. And we have those memory books from communities. We have those, I suppose, if you went to a huge library like at Hebrew Union College or in England, the big library there, you would find, or in Jerusalem, find the names and books of those communities. I have one from the place in which my father, may rest in peace, grew up in Europe. They had their own memoir book, and I have one of those. So we have these customs from that time, and they have stuck, and they're real. And as I say, at North Shore, Rabbi Geffen has such a book, very carefully, nicely done. You probably have one of your own, but a service that she prepared on the basis of tradition for the congregation, for North Shore congregation. Now, there were two other elements that we should be aware of. I see I'm running out of time, and I'd like to hear your response. It grew up to be a custom to have a section of prayer for three categories at least. And now we have a couple of others that are very meaningful to me as I read them that came in, at least Rabbi Geffen has it. One was for lost rabbis or great people in the community. Let's say someone from a certain community, like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, died. You would include a name of a person like that, might be a half a dozen, might be 10, in the community prayer book after that. So her name and a little paragraph about her would have been included in one of these prayer books. So that's a custom, and still we practice that custom with great people. Two, soldiers. So in many congregations, I don't know whether at North Shore this exists, I just don't remember, but in most Orthodox and conservative congregations, there are those soldiers who died during the year, in Israel, fighting for the country of Israel. That is veterans of wars that Israel has fought, the state of Israel now, and who died during that struggle, or just during the past year, killed by others, and possibly members of the Muslim population, I don't know, or Jordan or a country like that. Now, so that's another category, and I noticed it. I listened on purpose to the Bethel service. The other category that is regular these days, rabbis killed in the war in Israel, and then the category, which is a very sad category, tragic losses. Let's say an automobile accident, or crash of an airplane, or died in that manner. And finally, children, little children who died. So little children who died in the course. So these are customs that have developed. What I want to ask is that I've asked you a question. If you were creating a memorial service, and that's an old category, Haskarat Neshamot. Yizkor is, in Jewish tradition, the names of portions, texts, whole services are sometimes named from the first word. Like the fifth book of the Bible, Deuteronomy, the first important word is Devarim. These are the words, or these are the matters. And so the book is called Devarim because it's the first important word in the book. Yizkor is called Yizkor because the first word in the prayer is Yizkor. Yizkor Elohim, may God remember. The verb comes first, Yizkor, let God remember, or God bring into memory. So that's why it's called Yizkor, just because it's the first important word in the prayer. The whole name for it officially is Haskarat Neshamot, the remembrance of souls, and for short, Yizkor. I asked this. I asked it in a way before. I'd like to ask it again. Why today? The first question I had is why did little children leave the service during Yizkor? In other words, my parents said it's time for you to leave, and we'll meet you afterwards. And why do you think that is? I think there may have been superstition involved. If you're going to be there during Yizkor while your parents are alive, it's almost superstitious magic that if you say a Yizkor prayer in the congregation while your parents are alive, that's kind of spooky in the sense, from a superstitious point of view, that it's as if they're dead and you're bringing about their death. Now, that would be a superstitious reason. And I think that's part of the reason children were asked to leave, myself. Not a very good reason. That custom, I don't know if that custom still, have you ever seen that, been at a service where Yizkor service where children left? Did you ever see anything like that?
Go ahead, Dick.
Well, yes, Rabbi. When I was a child in an Orthodox synagogue, we left. We whose parents were living and with us would leave. I thought then, and I still think it was a superstition, and I agree with you there, but maybe there's another side to that.
Oh, good.
Perhaps the child leaving is so as not to deprecate the solemnity and the importance and the meaning of the service. It is for those who have suffered the loss of a dear one.
Very sad, yeah.
Exclusive for them.
Yes, yes. So it's a kind of exclusivity, the dignity of the service. That may be part of it. There may be more than one reason, of course, that this is nice to see you, Dick. but yeah, that could be many reasons, and that the solemnity, and this is something for adults, and should be kept at a high level. And the parent doesn't want to say, stop messing around in your seat to the child that's there, and or give them a break or something like that. But I think part of the reason when I was a kid was superstitions. So that's just a guess, but I think that was the case. But the deepest question, and the one that concerns me the most, is why the longest. I've already included the idea that this rabbi or that rabbi might have thought my service is so great, I want it in the prayer book, and it was published in the prayer book. And there are 3 or 4 whole yes, go ahead.
Well, I think that it is reflective of the evolution of Reform Judaism from its predecessors. And we have evolved and find new ways to worship, to deal with our religion and our traditions. But on this day, we are also remembering the past. And I think that in an effort to remember how things were, we draw upon tradition and emphasize the past as we look forward to the future.
Good. Do you, Dick, or any of you remember did any of you grow up, did you grow up, Dick, for example, in classical Reform Judaism? Do you remember the term classical reform? Classical reform.
I did not grow up in classical reform. My father had attended the yeshiva. He was a Hebrew teacher. We attended an Orthodox synagogue. But I've evolved, and I'm now a Reformed Jew. Yes, I have heard that term. I don't think we observe classical Reform Judaism, as I understand the term, at North Shore Congregation Israel.
No.
We've included much of the Hebrew liturgy interspersed with our growth.
Yes, classical reform. People my age, when we use the term classical reform, we were thinking of a congregation like Downtown Sinai congregation. When I was a young man, there were only 3 or 4 truly classical reform congregations left in the country. One, as I say, Temple Sinai in Chicago, one in St. Louis, a couple others in the country, and the term came to have a negative connotation to reform, to extreme reform, very distant from Jewish roots. So it became a negative. For some, it was a proud moniker name for the kind of old-fashioned, it's now old-fashioned classical reform. That kind of reform, where there's hardly a Hebrew prayer in the book, the Kaddish, and maybe one other prayer in Hebrew, the rest in English. I have the prayer book. I hope I brought it with me. The last classical reform prayer book, I know it's here. I'll pick it up. Here it is. This was the prayer book The Union Prayer Book. Do you remember? Do any of you remember? The Union, yes, good, good. The Union Prayer Book. Dick, do you remember this?
Yes, I do. My father was a Sunday school temple mitzvah, as a matter of fact, when I was a child.
Okay, so this prayer book, I brought it. It's volume 2, newly revised. This was used when I first became a Reform rabbi. It would not be of satisfaction to most Reform Jews today, but it was beautifully written. The English is superb. I looked up the Yizkor service in this book, and what it was, the Yizkor service contained, did contain Adonai Adam, oh man, what is man, oh God, the short life and the efforts, deeds, that the frailty and frailty and mortality of humans. That's the first paragraph. The second, it contains the prayer, "The Lord is my shepherd." It contains a prayer of remembrance for parents, and that's about it. In fact, even the middle part in the old Reform prayer book was done by a choir. Remember the big choirs and big organs, organ music. So so part of the service was organ music and readings, short, but the service was pretty short. The Yizkor service was short, and now it's become very long, and that's a question for me. I think there'll be a turning around with a shorter service that's already beginning with as I say, people like Rabbi Geffen, where the service has been shortened considerably and made of reasonable length and done quite well, in my opinion. Then with the Mourner's Kaddish, and always ending with El Malay Rachamim, chanted now by our excellent cantor at North Shore. So it's gotten again, it went to great lengths, and now if Rabbi Geffen represents her generation, it's gone much shorter, more contained, and put in but it's kept in the afternoon service. In most Reform congregations, there's an afternoon service leading right into the Yizkor, and then quickly into Ne'ilah. And sadly, I still see at North Shore, and Wendy does what I used to do, say, please stay for the short Ne'ilah service. But people after Yizkor, they come for Yizkor. It's their parents, their loved ones, and they get up and leave. Even whether the rabbi says, please stay for the short concluding service, and it is short. But I notice that people just come for Yizkor. So Yizkor has a hold on the mentality of people who even are not so close to the tradition. Well,
Rabbi Bronstein.
There's a couple of questions.
Nice
Yeah.
to see you. Hi.
Hi, good afternoon, sir. Recognize this, sir?
Oh, yes, I have that here too. That's
I was just going to ask if you wanted me to read some of the names of the contributing liturgy committee on this book.
all right.
We know one.
Go ahead. Maybe colleague.
I'm going to assume that they're all rabbis, but Jay Brickman,
Yes.
Herbert Bronstein,
Oh, okay. All right. Thanks.
and I'll stop there.
All right. I was one of the editors of that prayer book.
Yes, you were.
I was head of the liturgy committee for the Reform movement for 10 years, which is too long to have held that position. But I was in charge of liturgy for the whole Reform movement as chairman of the committee for 10 years. And then I did contribute to that prayer book. There are contributions that I've made of readings to the current prayer book suggestions that are my suggestions are in the book. But so far as I know, I could say that one of the lacks of the current prayer book, Yizkor prayer book, is that I don't have any of my writings in it. But no, it's a good service. Well, this has been a great joy to be with all of you who are present. I wish you a very good year for you, your families, and end with the expression, Gemar Chatima Tova. May you be inscribed and sealed or secured. May your place be secure. I don't like sealed. May your place, your name, your families, and all your loved ones secured in the book of life during all the years to come. And God bless. Shalom.
Hello, thank you.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Bronstein. Everyone, take care. Hope you continue to have an easy fast. And
Thank you, Sarah.
thank you. Take care,
I'm
everybody.
lucky that Sarah's in the congregation because everything comes to her, including nudniks like me. Thank you.
It was wonderful, Rabbi Bronstein. It
Thank
was
you.
great to learn with you today.
Thank you.
Take
Happy
care,
New Year,
everybody.
Rabbi Bronstein, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hi, thanks. Nice to see you. How are you? Gosh, this is a joy to see you. Everything good?
Yes, Happy New Year. It's great to see you and thank you so much for this.
Okay.